Beloved brothers and sisters, when we walk through the valleys of confusion, when the nights are long and the answers seem delayed, it is easy for the heart to grow weary and the mind to question. We look at our circumstances and ask, Lord, why not now? Why this path? Why this pain? Yet, in those very moments, heaven whispers softly, my child, everything will make sense soon. Just trust my timing. God's timing is never late. It is always perfect. The problem is not with God's clock, but with our patience to wait upon it. You see, faith is not truly faith until it has been tested by waiting. Many believers can praise God when doors open immediately, but the real mark of mature faith is when we can still lift our hands and worship Him while the doors remain closed. Waiting seasons are not wasted seasons. They are divine classrooms where God trains our spirit, molds our character, and prepares our hearts for the blessings He has already appointed for us. The Lord never forgets His promises. He fulfills them in the fullness of time, not in the rush of our emotions. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, betrayed by his brothers, and forgotten in the prison, it must have seemed like God had abandoned him. But heaven was quietly arranging everything for the moment Joseph would be elevated to the palace. If Joseph had been released earlier, he would have missed the appointed moment when Pharaoh needed him most. God's delays are not denials, they are divine alignments. What looks like rejection is often redirection, and what feels like an ending is usually a new beginning in disguise. So many people pray for miracles, but do not want the process that shapes them into vessels capable of holding those miracles. God does not only want to bless you, He wants to prepare you for the blessing. If the blessing arrives before you are ready, it may destroy you. Therefore, He works in hidden ways, pruning, refining, and strengthening your inner life. That is why we must not be anxious when things seem to move slowly. The tree does not bear fruit the day it is planted. There is a season of roots before there is a season of fruit. The deeper the root, the greater the fruit. God sees the full picture when we see only fragments. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, while we stand somewhere in the middle. That is why we must learn to rest in His wisdom. The same God who led Abraham to the unknown, who opened the Red Sea for Moses, and who raised Jesus from the tomb is the God who guides your life today. Do not let impatience steal your peace. What God has started, He will complete. When the appointed time comes, every tear will make sense, every delay will prove purposeful, and every prayer will find its answer. Everything will make sense soon. Trust God's timing. My beloved brothers and sisters, one of the greatest lessons we must learn in our walk with God is that His timing is never late. It is always perfect. We live in a world that moves fast, where people want instant answers, immediate breakthroughs, and quick success. But our God is not in a hurry. He is not bound by the ticking of a human clock. He operates in divine rhythm, not in human schedules. The moment we understand this truth, peace begins to reign in our hearts, because we realize that every delay, every detour, and every silence from heaven has a divine reason behind it. Many believers struggle not because God has forgotten them, but because they cannot align their hearts with His timing. We pray, we fast, and we expect instant results. And when nothing happens, doubt begins to whisper, maybe God has turned away. But let me tell you, God is never late. He does not forget. He does not sleep. He does not abandon His children. When He seems silent, He is still working behind the scenes, orchestrating the details of your destiny with precision that human minds cannot comprehend. Think of Abraham. God promised him a son, but that promise took years to manifest. If Abraham had given up in the waiting, he would never have seen Isaac. God was not slow. He was preparing Abraham's faith, teaching him to trust not in his own strength, but in divine power. When the right time came, the promise was fulfilled, and every year of waiting became a testimony of God's faithfulness. The promise did not come early, and it did not come late. It came at the appointed time. Our problem is that we see only a single page of the story, while God sees the entire book. He knows when to open a door and when to keep it closed. If He delays something, it is because that moment is not yet aligned with His greater purpose. Sometimes, He holds us back not to punish us, but to protect us. What you think is a setback is often God's way of shielding you from harm or preparing you for a greater assignment. When you trust His timing, you begin to see delays not as disappointments, but as divine appointments. In my own journey of faith, I have seen countless moments when God seemed silent, yet in that silence, He was shaping the next miracle. When we built the church, there were times of uncertainty and waiting. But each time, when the right moment arrived, doors opened that no man could shut. That is the nature of God. He may appear slow, but when His moment comes, everything moves with unstoppable power. So do not be anxious, my friend. Do not rush ahead of God. If you plant a seed today, it does not bear fruit tomorrow. The roots must grow deep before the fruit appears. Likewise, God is growing something unseen in you during this waiting season. When the fullness of time comes, you will look back and realize His timing was never late. It was perfect. My beloved brothers and sisters, there are moments in life when it feels as though heaven is silent and our prayers are floating into the air without response. You pray, you fast, you weep before the Lord, and still, nothing seems to change. It is in those moments that the enemy whispers, "You are forgotten." But hear me today. Waiting seasons are not wasted seasons. They are sacred times when God works in the hidden places, shaping us, strengthening us, and preparing us for what is to come. The delay of God is never a denial. It is divine preparation. When a farmer plants a seed, he does not dig it up every morning to check whether it has begun to grow. He trusts the process. He knows that under the soil, where eyes cannot see, life is forming. In the same way, when you are in a season of waiting, God is at work beneath the surface. You may not see results yet, but the roots of faith are growing deep. He is teaching you dependence, humility, and patience. These are the virtues that can only be formed in the soil of waiting. Without waiting, faith remains shallow. Without waiting, character remains untested. Let me remind you of David. He was anointed to be king as a young man, but he did not sit on the throne immediately. Instead, he spent years in the wilderness, fleeing from Saul, sleeping in caves, and learning to trust God in every circumstance. Those were his waiting years, but they were not wasted. God used that time to turn a shepherd boy into a king. The wilderness was his classroom, and the waiting was his training ground. When the appointed moment arrived, David was not just ready for the throne, he was ready for the responsibility that came with it. So many people want the blessing, but not the process that builds them for the blessing. They want the palace without enduring the wilderness. But my friends, if God gave you everything you prayed for right now, it might crush you instead of bless you. The waiting season is where He enlarges your capacity to handle what He is preparing to release. It is where you learn to depend not on your emotions, but on His promises. When you cannot trace His hand, you must trust His heart. In every delay, there is a divine design. God uses waiting to refine your motives and to reveal what is truly in your heart. Many times, He withholds something so that you may learn to value Him above the gift. When you can say, "Lord, even if you never give me what I ask, you are still enough," that is when heaven knows you are ready. Waiting seasons are holy seasons. They teach us to walk by faith, not by sight. They strip away pride and fill us with divine patience. And when the waiting is over, when the promise finally comes to pass, you will look back and realize that every tear, every prayer, and every quiet night was not wasted. It was preparation for glory. So do not despise your waiting season. Rejoice in it. God is working, even when you cannot see it. The seed is growing in the dark, and soon, it will break through into the light. Beloved brothers and sisters, many times in life we come to moments when it feels as though heaven has paused. We pray with passion, we believe with all our hearts, and yet the answer seems to take longer than we expected. In those moments, our human hearts cry out, "Lord, have you forgotten me?" But I tell you today with confidence, God's delays are not denials. When God holds something back, it is not because He has abandoned you. It is because He is aligning everything perfectly according to His divine purpose. You see, our God is not random. He does not move by impulse or accident. Every detail of your life is woven carefully into His eternal plan. The delay you face is not a mistake. It is a divine setup for something far greater than you imagined. Many times, we want the blessing now, but God says, "Wait, my child, because what I have prepared for you requires perfect timing." If you receive it too early, you may not be ready. If it comes too late, it may miss its purpose. So God, in His perfect wisdom, arranges every piece of your life so that, when the appointed time comes, everything fits together beautifully. Just like a divine mosaic. Think about Joseph, the son of Jacob. As a young man, he received a dream from God that one day he would rise to greatness. But instead of immediate promotion, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison. If you looked at his life during those years, you would think that God had forgotten His promise. But in truth, God was not denying Joseph. He was aligning him. Every hardship was leading him one step closer to the palace, the pit, the prison, the betrayal. All of these were divine alignments, preparing him to stand before Pharaoh at exactly the right time. If Joseph had been released even a year earlier, the opportunity would not have been ready. When the time came, one night was enough to lift him from the prison to the palace. That is the power of divine timing. When you face delay, do not lose heart. Remember, the same God who guided Joseph's steps is guiding yours. He knows the perfect season to open the door. What seems like rejection is often God's redirection. What feels like disappointment may be His protection. Sometimes, He closes one door not because He wants to withhold something from you, but because He wants to open a better one. If you trust Him through the delay, you will see how every no was actually preparing the way for a greater yes. Every tear was watering the seed of your future harvest. Every waiting moment was positioning you for divine favor. My friends, when heaven seems silent, don't let your faith grow weak. The silence of God does not mean the absence of God. He is working in ways you cannot see. The door will open, the promise will come, and when it does, you will understand that His delay was never denial. It was divine alignment for your destiny. Beloved brothers and sisters, hear this truth. Before God releases a blessing, He first prepares the vessel that will receive it. God never pours new wine into an old wineskin. He must first shape, cleanse, and strengthen your inner life, so that you can carry the weight of the glory He intends to give you. Many people pray for promotion, increase, or breakthrough, but they do not realize that every blessing requires a certain level of maturity, discipline, and spiritual capacity. God is not only interested in what He gives you, He is deeply concerned with who you are becoming in the process. We often ask, Lord, when will you bless me? But the better question is, Lord, am I ready for what I am asking? Because a blessing that comes before you are prepared can become a burden. When you pray for greater influence, God might first take you through a season of humility. When you pray for abundance, He may first teach you stewardship. When you pray for marriage, He may first teach you patience, forgiveness, and self-control. You see, God's goal is not simply to make you comfortable, but to make you complete. Think of Moses. He grew up in Pharaoh's palace, with all the knowledge and luxury of Egypt. Yet God did not send him to deliver Israel immediately. Instead, He sent him to the wilderness for 40 years to learn humility and obedience. Moses had to be broken before he could be used. The wilderness was not punishment, it was preparation. When the time came, Moses was no longer relying on his own strength, but on the power of the living God. The same is true in our lives. God often hides us before He uses us. He shapes us in secret before revealing us in public. The waiting season, the hidden season, the lonely season. These are not signs that you are forgotten. They are signs that you are in training for something greater. Just as a tree must first send its roots deep into the soil before it bears fruit, so must your spirit be rooted deeply in faith before the fruit of blessing can appear. When I was building the church, I learned this principle deeply. There were moments of delay and moments of struggle. I prayed, Lord, why is this taking so long? And the Spirit of God whispered, because I am building not just a church, I am building you. Those years of testing were God's way of forming character, faith, and perseverance. Without that inner foundation, the outer success would not have lasted. So, my dear friends, do not despise the process of preparation. The pain you feel now is not punishment, it is shaping. The pressure you feel is not rejection, it is refining. God is working on your heart, so that when the blessing comes, you will not just receive it, you will sustain it. When you allow God to prepare you, you become unshakable. The storms may come, but you will stand firm. The blessings may overflow, but pride will not overtake you. And when people see the glory on your life, they will know it was not your power, but God's preparation that brought you there. So trust the process. Let Him work in you. Because when preparation meets divine timing, the blessing will come, and it will not fade away. It will remain. Beloved brothers and sisters, our human eyes are limited. We see life piece by piece, moment by moment, as if looking through a small window. But our God, the Alpha and the Omega, sees the entire picture from beginning to end. He stands outside of time, yet He moves within it, guiding every step of your journey with perfect wisdom. What looks confusing to you today is clear and complete in His eyes. What seems like chaos is, in His hands, a divine pattern being woven for your good and His glory. Often, when we face trials or unanswered prayers, we become frustrated because we cannot see what God is doing. We say, Lord, I don't understand. Why this hardship? Why this delay? Why this pain? But, dear friends, we must remember, Just because you do not see the full story does not mean God has stopped writing it. Faith is trusting the author, even when you cannot read the next chapter. Think of a beautiful tapestry. On the front side, it looks glorious, full of order, beauty, and color. But if you look behind it, you will see tangled threads and knots that seem to make no sense. Many times, we are standing on the wrong side of the tapestry, looking at the confusion and wondering if God has made a mistake. But one day, when God turns it around, you will see the masterpiece He was creating all along. What appeared as broken threads were actually divine connections. What looked like a mess was, in truth, God's masterpiece. In the scriptures, we find this truth over and over again. Think about Esther. When she was taken to the palace, it seemed like a tragedy. A young girl separated from her family and people. Yet behind the scenes, God was positioning her to become queen so that, in the right moment, she could save her entire nation. She could not see the full picture, but God could. Every step of her journey, even the painful ones, were part of His divine design. In the same way, you may not understand what God is doing in your life right now. You may see only fragments, a broken dream, a closed door, a painful loss. But God sees the full image. He knows how to connect every piece. The job you didn't get, the relationship that ended, the prayer that seems unanswered. All are threads in His tapestry of grace. He never wastes a single tear, a single disappointment, or a single delay. My friends, when you cannot understand, do not complain. Worship. When you cannot see the path, trust the one who walks before you. God never makes mistakes. He does not improvise, He orchestrates. He knows the way you take. And when He has tested you, you shall come forth as gold. So hold on in faith. Do not be discouraged by what you see today. One day you will look back and say, now I understand. The pain had purpose. The waiting had meaning. The detour was destiny. Everything will make sense when you see it from God's side of the tapestry. Until then, walk by faith, not by sight. For the one who holds your future already sees the ending, and it is glorious. Beloved brothers and sisters, life is a journey filled with seasons. Seasons of joy and sorrow, growth and waiting, clarity and confusion. But through it all, one truth remains unshakable: our God is faithful. He never abandons His children. Even when we cannot see His hand, we can trust His heart. Every promise He has spoken will come to pass. Not one word will fail. The delays, the detours, the disappointments, they are not the end of your story. They are simply chapters, preparing you for a glorious conclusion. When we stand in the middle of our trials, we see only the storm. But above the clouds, the sun still shines. In the same way, above your present pain, God is still working. He is aligning every detail of your life for a divine purpose. The waiting is not wasted. The silence is not absence. The delay is not denial. It is the gentle hand of the Father, preparing you for something greater than you can imagine. So do not lose heart. Continue to pray, continue to believe, continue to wait in faith. Do not measure God's love by your current circumstances. Measure it by the cross. There, once and for all, He proved that His plans for you are good. His heart toward you is kind, and His purpose for you is eternal. When the time comes, and it will, the doors will open effortlessly, the tears will turn into testimonies, the confusion will turn into clarity. You will look back and realize that every step, even the painful ones, were necessary to lead you into the fullness of God's destiny for your life. My dear friends, trust His timing. Rest in His promises. Walk by faith, not by sight. because the God who began a good work in you will surely bring it to completion. And when that divine moment arrives, you will lift your hands and declare, "Now I understand. Everything makes sense. God's timing was perfect all along. Everything will make sense soon. Trust God's timing."